Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, coming to you from the beautiful community of Reedville, a delightful little neighborhood in the city of Boston. We have a wonderful show for you today. One of our friends from Familius Publishing, she is Brooke Jordan. She is the author of Lit for Little Hands, a wonderful series that introduces children to classic literature. If you're the author of a great children's book, we would love to have you as a guest on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. And if you're the author of a great children's book, you are also the head of your business. That's right. And your business is the business of selling your great children's book. And you want to do it right. That's why I think you should check out readingwithyourkids.com/inkfile, INCFILE. readingwithyourkids.com/inkfile. Inkfile helps you quickly and easily form your LLC, S Corp, C Corp, or any other business. Start your business today for as little as $49 and state fees. There's no contracts. There's no hidden fees. Inkfile has been trusted by over 150,000 businesses worldwide since 2004. Check it out today. Remember, you are the head of a business. Once you write your great children's book, you want to do it right. Go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com/inkfile, INCFILE, readingwithyourkids.com/inkfile. Joining us on the line right now from Cedar Hills in Utah. She is the author of Lit for Little Hands, and she's a member of the Familius family. Please welcome to the show, Brooke Jordan. Brooke, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
I love having you on. And I have a feeling I really could have used Lit for Little Hands when I was younger. And I'm not talking about when I was like the age that the Lit for Little Hands is being created for. Like when I was in high school and was supposed to be reading all this great literature, and it was just flying over my head. I think I really could have benefited from Lit for Little Hands, but tell us all about it.
Sure. So it's a board book series, and there are some board books that have tackled literature in the past, but the way that we try and do it differently to really stand out, these books, first of all, they actually tell the story. They're not a primer. We think that we can tell these amazing, timeless, complex stories to children, board book age. We try and simplify it as much as we can to tell real story. In addition to that, we use direct quotes from the books. So parents who are familiar with the classics, with Prejudice, with Peter Pan, they'll recognize those lines from the book. And the way it's integrated into the design, they can choose whether to read that to their child or not. But I think absolutely that's a great introduction to that style of language. The final thing that makes them different is they have moving parts. So each Lit for Little Hands board book has an array of wheels and pull tabs and little levers, just moving things that allow the child to interact with the story. For example, in Pride and Prejudice, there's a wheel with the dancers, the couples at a dance that they're having at a ball. There's a little lever where Lizzie is nursing Jane back to health. She kind of dabs her forehead. Fun things like that to get the child engaged with the story in a physical way.
Yeah. And that's really important for kids. You know, we talk about how kids love books over ebooks because they can touch and they can feel the books. And what Familius is famous for being really clever with creating these, well, to use a phrase that I use about my magic shows, totally interactive experiences with the kids, with the circles and the pull tabs and the spinning wheels and everything.
Right, thanks. Yeah, we really try and focus on that because, you know, every child or every person learns differently, right? But especially for children, that interaction is so important to keep them engaged, to keep them coming back to a story. We want to create stories they want to read again and again, and to help them understand the stories on a different level.
You know, it's interesting. One of the things, and I've, doing educational magic shows, one of the criticisms I've heard from time to time is, you really got the kids, you got them engaged, and they heard the message, and they took it in, and they really grabbed onto it. 3 weeks later, they're still talking about it, but we're not going to have you back because it was too much fun, and school's not supposed to be that much fun. And it seems that we spend so much time trying to bang our kids into learning a certain way, as opposed to just accepting the fact that we're all each unique individuals and we learn differently. So let's create tools that address those different needs and can give a kid a chance to learn in the way that they're best designed to learn.
Right. And I definitely think that we sometimes discount just the pure pleasure of reading specifically. That, the people think literature, you can't really enjoy it because you're trying to analyze it or you're learning. But I think they forget there is real pleasure to be taken from those great stories. And kids pick up on that from a very young age.
Yeah. I mean, let's say I don't care how classic literature is. If it wasn't fun for the people it was written for, we never would have heard of it. Never. Tell us some of the titles that you have integrated into the Lit for Little Hands series.
Sure. So far, I have adapted Pride and Prejudice, which, of course, classic. You got to start there. And then we did Alice in Wonderland, or Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and then Peter Pan. And this spring, actually in March, we're coming out with The Secret Garden. So this is a series that we hope to keep building. I can maybe give you a sneak peek. We're announcing next month that this fall we're releasing A Christmas Carol.
Oh,
for this
wow. Series. Very, very cool. I love that I also love that you're really respecting the audience for this, and that you're using some of the quotes, you're telling the story, you're not watering it down, you're not, at the risk of making big, powerful people mad, you're not Disneyfying it, and I think that's a real issue. I don't think that people totally respect that kids have this great ability to learn and to really kind of tackle complex stories.
Oh, absolutely. Kids are capable of understanding so much more than we give them credit for. Of course, there's great things about those Disneyfied versions, right? But the real story, the classic, the reason it's a classic is all those different deeper themes, the language. And those are the things that we sometimes think, oh, kids won't get that, kids won't appreciate it. But I just don't think that's true. We even try to integrate, not necessarily very many difficult words, but even the style of writing, we try and mimic that in the simplified versions. Because I think each author has a tone and a cadence. Think about Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. The style of that book, the way it's written, is so unique. And we wanted to capture a little of that to even give kids a taste of that. And we've had really great feedback.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, what kind of reaction are you getting both from the kids and from parents?
Oh, it's been overwhelmingly positive. Obviously, there's some nitpicking and things that we can be better at. But overall, people are just so excited to be able to bring stories that they love to their children. So I have 3 children, and I read them to my 2-year-old, and she loves them. They're really meant for maybe a little bit older, in that like 3 to 6 range, but even my 2-year-old loves it. Just last week, my husband was reading the adaptation of Peter Pan to her, and I don't know if he skipped a part, or I think he skipped the quote from the original, and she said, "No, Daddy, you don't know the words. Mommy will read it. She remembered that part was missing. She really loves the stories. A lot of feedback we're getting too is that people love to give them as gifts. Mm-hmm. That they can see the value in it and decide, my kids already have it. I want to give it to someone just starting their family, or someone who has kids who love to read, or someone who just loves literature and will eventually have kids.
Yeah.
And so that's a big market that we're seeing for the books.
Well, I imagine too, although it's too early, there hasn't been any kind of studies done on it yet, but I imagine the kids who are introduced to this kind of literature at a young age and learn to love these stories are going to learn to love them all over again when they get to middle school, when they get to high school, and they have a chance to read it through those eyes. And we always talk here about how amazing it is sometimes for a parent when they pick up a book to read to their kids. This is a book that I loved to read when I was a kid. I loved to have my parents read to me, and they read it, and all of a sudden it's meaningful to them again, but for a very different reason.
Right, on a new level. I think that's the beauty of classic literature, that any age, when you pick it up, you can kind of rediscover your love for it, and you understand it on a deeper level. Yeah. That's definitely one of our goals, one of my goals as the author adapting these books, that the children who read them will then come back to the novel later, that they will say, okay, I'm familiar with this story. Now I can tackle the real language. I think when I was growing up, there was, and I don't know if they're still in print, but the Great Illustrated Classics. There are these white books that are simplified versions of just any classic literature you can think of, any classic novel. And I read through those just voraciously. And because I knew the story, when I approached those books in high school and in college, they weren't as daunting because I already had a foundation in the stories and even in the themes. A lot of the times I recommend even college students read a summary of a book before they dive in, because having those building blocks allows you to focus less on, what is actually going on here, and be able to focus more on the deeper levels. What are the themes being taught? What are the symbols and allusions that we can find? Yeah.
If only I had read those summaries instead of watching the Three Stooges, I would have had a very different outcome in high school. you
Love the Three
Stooges. I do too. I actually saw them live. That's how old I am. But one of the things that you were talking about, we were talking earlier about, going back and revisiting books as we get older and discovering them on a different level. I think one of the things that this helps us do, and we can introduce this to our kids, is it helps us see how we've changed. The stories don't change. Those are classic stories, and they're the same as the same story when you read them when you were 7 and 17 and 27 and 77. But you've changed, and sometimes we don't realize that we've changed, and our perspective on life changes. And I think if our kids can understand that, if we can understand that, it makes it easier for us to look at other people and to kind of put ourselves into their places and to be more patient with folks and say, well, this person is looking at this from a completely different point of view than I am, and maybe we can work together and find some middle ground.
Oh, yeah. I have always thought that reading is kind of an exercise in empathy, that we have to really enjoy a book. You're putting yourself in someone else's shoes. You're trying to understand the human experience from their point of view. And that's why I love classic literature too. You're doing that not just from people in your historical time period in the modern day, but from any time period. And you see similarities and differences, but you either way are learning to empathize with other people's pain, with other people's joy. And that's that's what makes us human, right? That's such an important skill for children to learn from the beginning. Absolutely.
Exercise in empathy. Reading is an exercise in empathy. What a great quote that I am going to steal. Now, I'm wondering, I don't know if you pitched this idea to Familius or if they came to you, but what was your reaction when you finally got the go-ahead and they said, okay, Brooke, we want you to take these classics and transform them so that they're accessible for young ones?
Oh, I was ecstatic. It was kind of a team discussion.
Uh-huh.
We saw a hole in the market. We saw that there were board books that sort of introduced maybe characters from classic literature. And then there was really this gap all the way to kind of early readers. And we thought, how can we fill that gap? How can we jump in and make something that will be exciting and new? And so the chance to write that and to choose books that I love was just a dream come true.
Wonderful. And one of the things too, now Brooke is you're the managing editor with Familius, correct?
That's
And one of the things that I am finding in talking to all the different authors and different members of the Familius family is that there's this really, really cool creative energy that's going on there. And it sounds like it's, that Christopher Robbins, one of our past guests, has created an environment where that kind of thinking out of the box is encouraged.
Oh, absolutely. We have weekly meetings where, of course, there's time to discuss, just the day-to-day things we need to get done. But then we have time set aside just who has some creative ideas. How can we really push the envelope on what's being done in publishing and do it in a way that meets our mission, which is helping families be happy? So that's really our only parameter. We have permission to pitch stories all the time. When emails come to us, email submissions, we have the chance to tweak them and present them to the team. And that really is encouraged coming from every aspect. As managing editor, I mostly oversee our team of editors. I didn't do a lot of writing before, but with this idea and with my, English major background, this is something that they felt that I could do and that we felt we could deliver on as far as the art and the package. And it's really all come together because of that amazing creative spirit that Christopher fosters and that we've all kind of caught the bug.
Awesome. Brooke will be back in just a moment to offer some advice to authors. And I wanted to step in here to just let you know, in about a minute and a half, the sound quality is going to shift dramatically. It's just going to change. You're still going to be able to hear it, but it's just going to sound very different. What happened was, as luck would have it, technology failed, and our communication was cut off. We had to reestablish contact, and when we did, the sound was just different. Yeah, it was just different, and there's nothing that we can do about it. The information that Brooke is going to be sharing is really important, so we didn't want to lose that, but I did want to give you a heads up because it is quite different. Well, I'm going to ask you in a minute about some advice for authors, but before I do, I'm wondering, what was it like going from managing editor to author, and now all of a sudden your work and your writing had to be edited, and what was that experience like, and did your feathers get ruffled a little bit in the process?
Oh, great question. I think maybe it's easier going from an editor to an author because you know what to expect.
Okay.
And also I could choose which author to assign my book to, right? Or which editor. But at the same time, I just completely believe in the value of editing. Mm-hmm. I think that having at least one other pair of eyes, if not more, adds a depth and a polish to books that aren't edited just can't achieve. Mm-hmm. With even a children's book, as few words as there are, I think it really needs to be rigorously edited. Yeah. So I actually always look forward to the editing of these books because I try and get them as simple as I can, and then I hit a blind spot, kind of hit a wall, like I can't make this any simpler.
And then my editor comes back to me and they've completely solved a problem that I didn't even see. They've simplified or come up with a way to express something that is just perfect. So I really always appreciate the editor. And I think part of that is I know how it feels to be on the editing side, and I know the value of it, obviously. So it really is, it hasn't been a point of contention at all. It's something that I think is just necessary to the development of the book to make it the best it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I'm learning. Now, I'm in the process of taking a story that I've told on stage for years and years and trying to adapt it into a picture book. And so I brought it, and I'm working with an editor, and, it's like, well, that's great for the stage, but, you don't have a visual here. You need to kind of put it into words. And so we're working on it, and, there's this problem here, and now it's not so much a magic trick. You have to tell a story, and there's a different emphasis has to happen. And I'm really loving how the story's changing, but it's like a completely different story than what I started with.
That can happen. That can happen.
Well, as an editor, we have lots and lots of authors who listen, and many of them are self-published, and they don't have a chance to ask a question of a managing editor of a publishing house like Familius. So what kind of advice can you give to an aspiring author, young author, to make their writing the best they can?
Oh, number one, read. The more you read, the more you know what's out there and what you can contribute. And just the words that you learn and the language development that happens when you read. Number one, that's the most important thing. Number two, don't be afraid of any crazy idea. If something comes to you and you think, that couldn't make a book, that's too weird, or that's never been done, that's the point. That's what we want. And those are the books that make a splash. And those are the books that I think if it comes to you, if that idea strikes you, you are the one that's meant to write that book. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's important to know. And then also coming from a publishing house, when you're actually in that process of really trying to get a book published, find the right publishing house. Make sure you find the one that's best for your book. Check out their mission. Check out the other kinds of books they're publishing. Because I think there's, of course, a right author for every book, but there's a right publisher for every book as well.
Wow, very cool. And, of course, the mission at Familius is making families happy.
Right, helping families be happy.
Helping families be happy. Well, folks are absolutely going to want to know where to go to learn more about Lit for Little Hands. So why don't you remind us about the Familius website, please?
Sure. It's www.familius.com.
Awesome. We've been talking to the author of Lit for Little Hands. They have 3 books out right now: Pride and Prejudice, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and Peter Pan. They have some great books coming out in the near future. Brooke Jordan, we've had such a blast speaking to you today. We hope you'll come back to let us know about those new editions when they come out.
Oh, I'd love to. Thanks for having me, Jed.
Thanks, Brooke. Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. It is a really, really powerful episode with the author of Follow Me Down to Nicodemus Town. She's been on the show before. Alexandria LaFay will be here talking about a very important issue about race and about history, and how we can talk to our kids about race and history, and also help spark our kids' interest in digging down to get to the real truth of the situation. So it's a really important show. We really want you to make sure you don't miss it. LaFay, next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Sign up for our newsletter, and you can get a free digital download of my latest picture book. It's called Love That I Matter to You. Love That I Matter to You. You are going to love having your children read this book to you. I say it all the time. There are books that our kids love to read, us to read to them over and over and over again. Well, you are going to love to hear your child read Love That I Matter to You over and over and over again. because it gives them a way to tell you just how much they love the time that you spend with them. And it's wonderful to hear as parents, but it's also important for our kids to say to us. They want to say that to us. Sometimes they don't have the words. This is a book that gives them those words, and it gives them a great opportunity to do that. And it's free. Just go to readingwithyourkids.com, sign up for our newsletter, and get the free digital download of Love That I Matter to You. Before we go, we want to thank Brooke Jordan for being here tonight. Be sure to check out her Lit for Little Hands series from our friends at Familius. And of course, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.